Alright, today I am just going to briefly go over our multiplying rules, dividing rules, adding rules, subtracting rules, and then we're going to apply it to a word problem. The first word problem that I'm going to do as an example is going to be the first example that's on the worksheet that you have to do for class today. So you should do that one with me so that way you know how to do it and you know that the first one is correct, and then you can go on from there. At any point, you may go back and stop the video, go back, do whatever, or anything like that if you need to, or it's there if you need it later on in the unit. So the first thing that we're going to go over is how to multiply fractions. And I put a mixed number in here. We have 2 1/3 times 2 fourths. And remember, so our first step is going to be changing this mixed number into an improper fraction. And the way that we do that is, we do that by changing multiplying our denominator by our whole number, which is 3 times 2, which is 6, and then adding the numerator to that product. So 6 plus 1 is 7. So I'm going to have 7, and my denominator stays the same, so 7/3. I don't have to change 2 fourths because it's already a regular fraction, times 2 fourths. Now for multiplying, I can just multiply straight across. I have 7 times 2, which I know is 14. And then I have 3 times 4, which is 12. So now I have 14/12, which is an improper fraction. And by this point, you should know that we cannot leave improper fractions that way. They have to be changed into a mixed number. So 14 goes into the house if I tip the cow. And 12 is outside. 12 goes into 14 one time. 12 times 1 is 12. And then 14 minus 12 is 2. Sorry. So now I have my whole number, my numerator, and my denominator. So it equals 1 and 2/12, which also at this point you should know that you absolutely have to simplify. So 2/12 can be simplified by dividing by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So 1 and 1/6 is going to be our answer for this problem. Alright, let's move on to dividing. Here we're going to do 1 1/2 divided by 2 1/4. Again, just like multiplying fractions, you have to change the mixed numbers into improper fractions. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3, so I am going to have 3 halves divided by 4 times 2 is 8. 8 plus 1 is 9. So it's divided by 9 fourths. And then we have to KCF. So we have to keep our first fraction, change division to multiplication, and then flip the second fraction. So we're keeping 3 halves, changing division to multiplication, and instead of 9 fourths, I'm going to flip it to 4 ninths. Now I've done this, and I can multiply straight across. 3 times 4 is 12. 2 times 9 is 18. This is not an improper fraction, so I don't have to divide it in the house and see how much is left over, but I do have to simplify it. And I can simplify it by dividing by, let's do 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. 18 divided by 3 is 6. I can still divide this again. They're still both even. 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 6 divided by 2 is 3. So my final answer for this problem is going to be 2/3. Alright, let's brush up on adding. Adding and subtracting rules are very similar to each other. You have to be careful because a lot of times you'll get caught up in the multiplying and dividing rules, and you will start to apply those rules to the adding and subtracting fractions rules, which is just going to make everything harder. For adding, in order to add fractions, you have to have a common denominator. You do not have to change these mixed numbers into improper fractions. If you want to, just so that you don't forget any other time, you're more than welcome to. But sometimes it's easier to just leave them. We're going to make our 4 our common denominator. That way I don't have to change this fraction. I just have to change 1. So I'm going to go ahead and bring 3 and 3/4 over. And then I'm going to change 2.5. In order to get it out of 4, I know I need to multiply this by 2, and I need to multiply this by 2, because whatever you do the bottom, you have to do the top. My whole number is going to stay the same, so I'm just going to move that over. 1 times 2 is 2, and 2 times 2 is 4. Now, I can just add them straight across. So I have 3 plus 2, which is 5. Then I have 3 plus 2 again, which is also 5. And then I don't add my denominator. So what I have here is 5 and 5/4, which is a mixed number with an improper fraction. So I need to change that improper fraction into a mixed number. 4 goes into 5 one time. 4 times 1 is 4. 5 minus 4 is 1, so I have 1 and 1/4 is what just my fraction here equals. So now I have 1 and 1/4. And then I have to remember to add in my whole number that I already had. So I'm going to add 5. And my final answer is going to be 5 plus 1, which is 6. And then I have my fraction. So 6 and 1/4. Alright. And last one let's brush up on is subtracting. Subtracting and adding have the same basic concept, because for these you both have to have a common denominator. So again, we're going to go with 4, so I'm only changing one fraction instead of 2. That makes my life a little easier, and it makes simplifying in the end a little better. So I'm just going to carry over 3 and 3/4. Carry over my 2 as well. I'm going to multiply this by 2, multiply this by 2 in order to make it out of 4. 1 times 2 is 2, 2 times 2 is 4. And so first I'm going to start with whole numbers. 3 minus 2 is 1. 3 minus 2 again is 1. And then my denominator stays the same. I don't subtract them. So my final answer here would be 1 and 1/4. Now that we've brushed up on this, yesterday we got notes and keywords and steps on how to solve word problems. So I'm going to go over the first one with you. You should do it on your worksheet with me. When I'm highlighting, you should be highlighting, underlining, or circling as well. So I know that you're paying attention to the problem. And so that when I go back and check it, I can know what you thought was important. Alright. This problem says, one batch of Fred's pancake recipe takes 2 3/4 cups of milk. If Fred triples his batch of pancakes, how many cups of milk will he need? I could do this 2 different ways. But first, we need to look at our important words. So he has one batch. One batch takes 2 3/4 cups of milk. Fred is going to triple his batches. Want to know? And then my question, which is also quite important, because I want to make sure I'm answering the right question, is how many cups of milk will he need? So I could do this one of 2 ways. I could do adding, and I can make it harder, or I can multiply and just do one step rather than 3 different things. So over here, I'm going to circle multiplication because that's the operation that I'm doing. And then I'm going to write what I'm doing because remember, we have to make sure we show our work, right? So we have 2 3/4 that I'm going to use. and I'm tripling it. And in case you don't know, that means you are doing it 3 times. So I'm going to multiply it by 3. Remember that on your multiplication, the first step is to change the whole number or mixed numbers into improper fractions. So I'm going to do 4 times 2, which is 8, and 8 plus 3, which is 11. So this becomes 11 fourths, and then I'm multiplying it by 3. 3 is my whole number, and remember we make a whole number a fraction by putting a 1 under it. Now I can multiply straight across. I get 3 times 11, which is 33. And then 4 times 1, which is 4. And then before I put my answer in here, I have to make sure I've changed it into a mixed number. So how many times is 4 going to go into 33? Well, 4 times 8 is 32. And 33 minus 32 is 1. So my answer is going to be 8 and 1/4. Okay. So now you guys should be ready to really try this on your own. Remember, highlight, underline, circle in your word problems. Let me know the operation I was doing. Show all of your work, and your final answer should be in this box here. Remember to simplify.